Today, Grayscale CEO takes to CNBC to react to a federal court siding with the asset manager in its SEC lawsuit. X gets a currency transmitter license in Rhode Island, potentially paving the way for crypto payments. And Bitstamp's Bobby Zagotta explains what prompted the platform to halt Ether staking in the US. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Pippa Stevens. Digital currencies are giving back some of the gains made from Grayscale's victory in court yesterday. By noon Eastern, Bitcoin still traded above $27,000, Ether traded around $1,700, and Solana was around $21. Okay, let's talk about the top stories. Grayscale is preparing for next steps after scoring a victory in its lawsuit against the SEC. Yesterday, a D.C. Court of Appeals sided with the asset manager in its lawsuit against the SEC, which previously denied Grayscale's application to convert its Bitcoin trust into an ETF. Grayscale called that decision by the court monumental and said it was exploring next steps. As for what's next, well, here's what Grayscale's CEO Michael Sonnenschein told CNBC's Squawk Box this morning.
So today marks day one of a 45-day process where the SEC can request a rehearing. We really have to be patient now and follow the federal rules of appellate procedure here during that time period. And ultimately, the court will issue a final mandate that will detail the operational next steps.
Which means what from any investors in Grayscale or beyond? What are you looking at? What should they?
Yeah, I mean, in the interim, during this 45-day period, our lawyers are working, constructively, proactively with the SEC to pursue next steps as expeditiously as possible. We have to ensure that no one, especially the SEC, is not losing sight of the fact that there are nearly 1 million American investors who own GBTC today. So the patience that they've had inflicting any further harm on them, holding them back from bringing GBTC further into the regulatory perimeter would be a really missed opportunity and really directly violate the SEC's mandate.
Next, a group of creditors is speaking out against a tentative deal between Genesis and parent company DCG to repay some of its debts. That deal would see around $630 million in loans from May and $1.1 billion in loans due in 2032 repaid, at least for the most part. Genesis claimed the deal could lead to recoveries of around 70 to 90%. But in a court filing on Tuesday, that group of creditors called the loan repayment plan wholly insufficient and claims that the debtors failed to explain the fair value of those loan repayments. Last, X, formerly known as Twitter, is expanding its capability as a payments service. Elon Musk's social media network just won a license as a currency transmitter in Rhode Island. The nationwide mortgage licensing system shows that application was approved on August 28th. A currency transmitter license allows X to handle crypto and other payments services. Elon Musk and X CEO Linda Yaccarino have repeatedly said they've wanted to make X an everything app similar to WhatsApp. Part of that goal includes allowing payments. All right, for our main story, we recently learned that crypto exchange Bitstamp plans to stop Ether staking in the US amid the backdrop of a regulatory crackdown. So Crypto World's Talia Kaplan spoke with the CEO of Bitstamp USA about that and why the crypto exchange suspended trading of major altcoins for US customers.
We recently learned that a U.S. Court of Appeals sided with Grayscale over the SEC in the closely watched Bitcoin ETF case. The District of Columbia Court of Appeals essentially paved the way for Bitcoin exchange-traded funds. What's your reaction to that ruling, and what do you think the implications are for the industry?
This is incredibly exciting, and it's a long time coming. ETFs are available today in other countries, in Canada and even in Europe. So it would be great for this to be available in the US. And what it represents to the industry is a gateway for new segments of participants in the market. And not, by the way, not fly-by-night organizations. The most serious and significant asset management companies in the world have applied for an ETF. And if this is another step towards their approval, that will just be a game changer.
How do you think this whole thing will pan out? Do you think spot Bitcoin ETFs will be approved right now? There's applications from places like BlackRock, WisdomTree. How do you think this whole situation will pan out from here on out?
Yeah, I'm really encouraged. I've been wrong before when it comes to the SEC and particularly their timetables, but I am encouraged. I do believe we'll get there. I do believe there's enough validation just by virtue of the fact of the names that have applied. You know, as I mentioned, these are the most sophisticated investors in the world. They obviously believe that there's an important market there for their customers. And I believe the SEC is supportive of good business. They just want to make sure it's safe. And we assume that as they progress through their process, they'll come to that conclusion that it is safe and it is valid and it is important for U.S. consumers.
Well, it certainly will be very interesting to see what transpires. But last week, we learned that Bitstamp plans to stop Ether staking in the United States because of the quote, current regulatory dynamics. Can you expand on what prompted the move and why now? Did the settlement between your rival Kraken and the SEC have anything to do with it? I mean, in February, the crypto firm said it was shuttering its US staking operation after the SEC said Kraken failed to register the offer and sale of the digital asset staking as a service program. Did that serve as an eye opener for you, perhaps?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of factors here. You know, the first one is, as you may know, Bitstamp is the longest running cryptocurrency exchange. We're also the most regulated and we feel the most compliant forward and therefore trusted in the marketplace. We've got 12 years of track record. We were the first to ever have a license. We're the only exchange that has 7 years of clean audit opinions from a big four accounting firm. You know, we've endeavored to be kind of the poster child for trust and regulated opportunities for participants. So with that reputation, when we do bring an offering to market, it's viewed as a seal of approval, if you will, by many in the marketplace, and we take that very seriously. So we monitor the regulatory landscape very, very closely, and we make judgments based on what we're seeing. And in this particular case, you know, staking is there's a lot of nuances to how offerings are constructed. And for instance, our staking offering was quite different from some of the others in the market, including Kraken. However, we thought that the smart thing to do here as this plays out is to, you know, make sure that we're on the sideline and observing and learning based on what regulators are doing and how the market is responding versus on the field of play going against regulators, perhaps.
So I take it the backdrop of a regulatory crackdown did in fact have something to do with your decision.
Absolutely. You know, we take regulator actions at face value. I mean, there's a lot of rhetoric out there that we try not to over-index on. But when a regulator takes an action against a company in the marketplace, we tend to take that at face value and we think, okay, so what is the most trusted play here for the marketplace and for Bitstamp? And unfortunately, in this case, we decided to temporarily halt this staking offering, which I think is a wonderful offering. We hope it'll be quite temporary, but we have to see how the environment is going to play out.
Earlier this month, Bitstamp said it would halt U.S. trading for 7 crypto tokens, including Solana's Sol token and Polygon's Matic token, citing recent developments for the move. Can you expand on that? I mean, the SEC named those tokens as securities in the agency's lawsuits against Binance and Coinbase. So did that have anything to do with your decision?
It did. It did. This falls into a similar category where we're monitoring the actions of not just the SEC, but regulators in general. And we think that they've raised some questions about some specific tokens, and we'd like to further explore those. But we don't want to explore them from a perspective of full participation. We'd rather kind of do our analysis on the sideline. One of the important considerations here is as we have studied tokens, and again, we have a very rigorous and comprehensive framework that we're operating from. We've looked closely at the tokens the SEC has identified, and we have yet to come up with a pattern, you know, or a rhyme or reason why why these particular tokens are named. And for that reason, we need to learn more. Basically, we need to learn more. We're not going to automatically assume the SEC is wrong, and we're not going to automatically assume that we're right, but rather we're going to take a step back and make sure that when we list or continue to list, it's with the utmost confidence.
So you touched on this, but overall, how is Bitstamp operating in the US amid the current environment, especially given the lack of regulatory clarity here? What steps are you taking to make sure you're in compliance with the current laws here in America?
Yeah, well, we invest quite heavily in this topic, and as many do in this space. But for Bitstamp globally, it's about a third of all of our human resources that are applied to compliance, risk, legal type analyses, and making sure that what we bring to market is absolutely valid and trustworthy. And so we'll continue to do that. In the U.S. in particular, I'm encouraged by some of the legislative action that we've seen in the last few months. There's about 4 bills that have progressed out of committee and stand a shot of working through the rest of the legislative process. We think that level of clarity is absolutely necessary. And for Bitstamp, we're also comforted by the fact that our primary market is Europe. So that's our primary base of business. And in Europe, the regulatory landscape is quite different, and it's becoming much clearer with the MiCA framework and other things. And we're seeing that in terms of inflow of new business in Europe. And we hope the same will happen in the US and not in the not too distant future.
Bobby Zagotta also talked about what Bitstamp is doing to ensure U.S. customer assets are safe, especially following the FTX collapse. You can check out his full interview at cnbc.com/Crypto World. Okay, that is all for Crypto World today. We'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.